and to be able to buy a jabot, or a smart hat, or a book. You don't know how I wanted things, and how tired I got of never having them. I'm happy. I'm happy. Leave me alone." "It's an awful price to pay for a hat, and a jabot, and a book, and a theater ticket, Fan." Ella Monahan had taken the tube, and was standing in the great shed watching arrivals with interest long before they bumped over the cobblestones of Hoboken. The three descended to Fanny's cabin. Ella had sent champagne, 6 cozy pints in a wicker basket. "They say it's good for seasickness," she announced cheerfully, "but it's a lie. Nothing's good for seasickness except death or dry land. But even if you do feel miserable, and you probably will, there's something about being able to lie in your berth and drink champagne alone, by the spoonful, that's sort of soothing." Hale had fallen silent. Fanny was radiant again, exclamatory over her books and flowers. "Of course, it's my first trip," she explained, "and an event in my life. But I didn't suppose that anybody else would care. What's this? Candy? Glacé fruit." She glanced around the luxurious little cabin, then up at Hale, impudently. "I may be a coarse, commercial person, Clancy, but I must say I like this very, very much. Sorry." They went up on deck. Ella, a seasoned traveler, was full of parting instructions. "And be sure to eat at Kapinski's in Berlin. 20 cents for lobster. And caviar. Big as hen's eggs and as cheap as codfish. And don't forget to order Maybole. It tastes like champagne, but it isn't. And it has the most delicious dwarf strawberries floating on top. This is just the season for it. You're lucky. If you tip the waiter 1 mark, he's yours for life. Oh, and remember the plum compote. You'll be disappointed in their Wertheims that they're always bragging about. After all, Field's makes them all look like country stores." "Wertheim's, is that something to eat, too?" "No, idiot, it's their big department store." Ella turned to Hale, for whom she felt mingled awe and liking. "If this trip of hers is successful, the firm will probably send her over 3 or 4 times a year. It's a wonderful chance for a kid like her." "Then I hope," said Hale quietly, "that this trip may be a failure." Ella smiled uncertainly. "Don't laugh," said Fanny sharply. "He means it." Ella, sensing an unpleasant something in which she had no part, covered the situation with another rush of conversation. "You'll get the jolt of your life when you come to Paris and find that you're expected to pay for the lunches and all the cab fares and everything of those shrimpy little commissionaires. Polite little fellows they are, in frock coats and mustaches, and they just stand aside as courtly as you please while you pay for everything. Their house expects it. I almost passed away the first time, but you get used to it. Say, imagine one of our traveling men letting you pay for his lunch and taxi." She rattled on, genially. Hale listened with unfeigned delight. Ella found herself suddenly abashed before those clear, far-seeing eyes. "You think I'm a gabby old girl, don't you?" "I think you're a wonderful woman," said Hale. "Very wise and very kind." "Why, thanks," faltered Ella. "Why, thanks." They said their good-byes. Ella hugged Fanny warm-heartedly. Then she turned away, awkwardly. Hale put his 2 hands on Fanny's shoulders and looked down at her. For a breathless second she thought he was about to kiss her. She was amazed to find herself hoping that he would. But he didn't. "Good-by," he said simply, and took her hand in his steel grip a moment and dropped it, and turned away. A messenger boy, very much out of breath, came running up to her, a telegram in his hand. "For me?" Fanny opened it, frowned, smiled. "It's from Mr. Fenger. Good wishes. As if all those flowers weren't enough." Said Ella. She and Hale descended the gangway and stood at the dock's edge, looking rather foolish and uncertain, as people do at such times. There followed a few moments of scramble, of absurdly shouted last messages, of bells and frantic waving of handkerchiefs. Fanny, at the rail, found her two among the crowd and smiled down upon them, mistily. Ella was waving energetically. Hale was standing quite still, looking up. The ship swung clear, crept away from the dock. The good-byes swelled to a roar. Fanny leaned far over the rail and waved too, a sob in her throat. Then she saw that she was waving with the hand that held the yellow telegram. She crumpled it in the other hand and substituted her handkerchief. Hale still stood, hat in hand, motionless. "Why don't you wave good-by?" she called, though he could not possibly hear. "Wave good-by." And then the hand with the handkerchief went to her face, and she was weeping. I think it was that old drama thrill in her, dormant for so long. But at that, Hale swung his hat above his head 3 times like a schoolboy, and grasping Ella's plump and resisting arm, marched abruptly away. Chapter 15.